students, welcome. Myself Dr. Roshni, your OBGYN faculty. So today we are going to talk about PPH, one of the dreadful topics, isn't it? It is important from your MCQ point of view for sure, but also important from your day-to-day clinical basis and your handy. You should know, it should be in your fingertips. PPH cannot be missed by anyone, okay? So it is life of a patient in your hand now. So to begin with, let us learn about PPH. So here the incidence of PPH is so high that the mortality because of PPH, maternal mortality because of PPH per se, okay, PPH is the leading cause of maternal mortality is as high as 35 to 40%. Maternal mortality because of postpartum hemorrhage is as high as 35 to 40%. 140,000 women every year die of postpartum hemorrhage alone. That means 1 in every 4 minutes. By the time we complete this class, so many people would have had PPH, isn't it? So every year experience postpartum hemorrhage. And then 2 to 4% after a vaginal delivery and 6% after a cesarean delivery. Okay, this is the incidence of postpartum hemorrhage. This is very important. One of the important MCQs also. Okay, by definition, postpartum hemorrhage is any amount of bleeding, be it a mild bleeding. Even in case of anemic patient with a HB of 7 gram, if she bleeds 200 ml, it is going to be severe for her only, isn't it? Any amount of bleeding from or into the genital tract. From means you can see visibly bleeding coming out, or into the genital tract means a broad ligament hematoma is forming, angle is leaked in the intracesarean sections. Okay, in such case, into the genital tract, after the delivery of the baby till purpurium, okay, which is adversely affecting the mother by raise in pulse. Okay, the pulse rate is raised and the BP is falling. This is the clinical feature that you can see. In such case, it is said to be as a postpartum hemorrhage. Usually, in a quantitative definition, blood loss following a vaginal delivery of more than 500 and following a cesarean delivery of more than 1000 and following cesarean hysterectomy, it is more than 1500. This is a quantitative definition. It need not be the same for every patient, but generally if it is more than this, then it is called as a postpartum hemorrhage. Okay. What is primary postpartum hemorrhage? It is within 24 hours if somebody bleeds, and secondary is after 24 hours, anytime later she bleeds is secondary postpartum hemorrhage. Minor is when the blood loss is less than a liter, and major is it's more than that. In that, moderate is 1 to 2 liters and massive is more than 2 liters. Coming to the risk factors, what are the risk factors for postpartum hemorrhage? Most common is placenta previa and abruptio placenta. Remember, if somebody gives you a history of antepartum hemorrhage, okay, then they are also prone for postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, all those causes which are causing antepartum hemorrhage are also high tendency to have a postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, multiple pregnancies, preeclampsia, previous PPH, operative deliveries, big babies, anemia, prolonged labors, infections and abnormal placenta. Name a thing, name a disease and say it is a risk factor for PPH. There is nothing like low risk for PPH. All the diseases, be it liver disorders or be it whatever that you are talking, all of them are high risk for PPH. Okay, name a disease in pregnancy and all of them are risk for PPH. That is why PPH is the leading cause of maternal mortality. The prime reason may be any of these things. Maybe anemia is a secondary cause. The primary cause of death will be postpartum hemorrhage. Okay. So coming to diagnose, when you say, okay, this amount of bleeding is normal and this amount of bleeding is excessive. So based on the visual inspection, visual estimation of blood loss, okay, they can give you a pad, okay. This is a sanitary pad. All these three are a sanitary pad. If the sanitary pad is soaked only half, then it means it is 25 ml soaked of blood loss. If it is soaked more than half but not full, that it means it is 50 ml of blood loss. When a sanitary pad is fully soaked, that means it is 100 ml of blood loss. Okay, this is how you will estimate. It is approximate estimation. Always remember, visual estimation of blood loss is less than the actual blood loss. You may think, okay, seeing all this blood, maybe she has lost around 500 ml. Okay, but always visual estimation is less than the amount of actual blood loss that you can see is always less. Okay, then coming to a underpad, you can see a patient would have been lying on an underpad. If that underpad is soaked half of it, then it is 100 ml. If it is more than half and less than 3/4, then it becomes 250 ml. If it is 3/4 soaked, it becomes 350 ml. If it is fully soaked, if the underpad is fully soaked, that means it is 500 ml. Okay, I'm sure everybody would have seen in your clinical practice some of the underpads. Okay, if the patient is telling my underpad is fully soaked, that means you have to think it is a major amount of blood loss. She is having more than 500 ml of blood loss. Okay. Lastly, coming to the mop that you would have seen in your intra-op, they would have been using mop pad, isn't it? That almost measures up to 18 into 18 centimeters. So this mop, if it is soaked, half of it, okay, approximately 50% is soaked, it is 25 ml. It is soaked more than half and not full. Okay, more than half but not full. 75% is soaked, that means it is 50 ml. It is fully soaked, that means it is 75 ml. But it is fully soaked and it is dripping, then it is 100 ml blood loss. This is the most of the common things that we use in our OT. So when we are doing a cesarean for a high-risk patient, we count the mops. How many mops have been soaked? For example, if they give you a clinical case scenario like this, you were operating on a multiple pregnancy and the mops taken were 10 mops and they were fully soaked, okay, with dripping. Fully soaked dripping means each mop weighed around 100 ml of blood loss. So they used around 10 mops. That makes it 1000 ml of blood loss. Does this patient have PPH? Yes, this patient has PPH, isn't it? Or they may give you, you're operating on a cesarean section and you have used around 12 mops. Okay, 12 mops. Each mop soaked around, let us imagine they told you it is soaked 75%. 75% is soaked means how much is the blood loss? It is approximately 50 ml. So 12 into 50 ml, that will be approximately around 600 ml of blood loss. That means you have to say the patient had approximately 600 ml of blood loss just by the mops. There will be other suction that you are using, other things that you are using, isn't it? Just by mops, she has lost around 600 ml of blood loss. Okay, that is how you will assess the blood loss based on visual inspection. Okay. Next, going ahead with the obstetric shock. What is obstetric shock? It is, by definition, pulse rate divided by the systolic pressure. Normal obstetric patient, what is the obstetric shock index? Obstetric shock index is ranging between 0.7 to 0.9. This also they've asked you multiple times. You should know, okay, the values. So, MCQ, it is very important. Normal obstetric shock index in a patient is 0.7 to 0.9. If it is more than 1, that means you should think in terms of postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, if the obstetric shock index is more than 1. Coming to the golden first rule. What is golden first hour rule or rule of 30? That means the first 1 hour of following a PPH is very important. If you can assess the patient and treat in this 1 hour, chance of morbidity and mortality is very low. Okay, if you this 1 hour, if the patient is not with you or you're not treating her in this 1 hour, that means she'll end up in definitely morbidity, and if you're not treated perfectly, it will end up in a mortality. Okay, the first hour, what are things that you will see? Pulse rate will raise by more than 30, rule of 30. Okay, and respiratory rate will also raise more than 30. Systolic blood pressure will fall by more than 30 mm of Hg. Okay, so pulse rate is raising, tachypnea is there, blood pressure is falling. Hemoglobin is falling by more than 30%, that is more than 3 grams. Estimated blood volume losses around 30%, that is 100 ml per kg. Okay, blood volume is reducing, hematocrit is reducing, BP is reducing, pulse is raising, and the respiratory rate is increasing. These are the features of first golden hour, that you should monitor these things in a patient, and if it is worsening, then you should start your treatment for PPH. Okay. So before we go for the treatment of PPH, what is prevention of PPH? By doing a simple method. Okay, it is called active management of third stage of labor. That is AMTSL. Many times they have given you the short form also. Active management of third stage of labor. Okay, so what happens in AMTSL? The present 3 things that you should do in AMTSL is, in right now, you should give injection oxytocin 10 units intramuscular. Okay, oxytocin 10 units IM, delayed cord clamping. Once the fetus is out, you should not clamp the cord immediately. This has 2 benefits. One, the fetus, once you delay the cord clamping, the fetus will get so much of blood, almost 30 ml of blood will come to the fetus, extra blood, okay? Fetal anemia will be avoided, okay? Then one more thing is what? The placental bulk will reduce. The placenta will otherwise retain so much blood, unnecessarily it will go waste, isn't it? So placental bulk will reduce with that. That will help in easy separation of placenta. So delayed cord clamping, at least 1 to 3 minutes you have to wait, or till the cord pulsations are lost. Okay, you have to wait till then to clamp the cords. After you clamp the cord, how will you remove the placenta? It is by controlled cord traction. You should always remove the placenta by controlled cord traction. The modified Brand-Andrew technique. One hand you will give the traction, the other hand you will control the pressure. This is to prevent uterine inversion. Okay, so complete removal of placenta also will be ensured with these things. This is the present 3 steps in active management of third stage of labor. Previously, what was the 3 things that you were using? Instead of delayed cord clamping, there was uterine massage. Okay, oxytocin and controlled contraction was there previously also. Along with that, there was uterine massage. Okay, for every patient, they did uterine massage. Since it was very discomfort to the patient and did not have much effect in prevention per se, but it has very good effect as a treatment for postpartum hemorrhage. As such, it did not prevent postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, that is why this has been replaced with a delayed cord clamping. This is one of the important MCQs. I am sure you should know this. Okay, and this, by just doing this active management of third stage of labor, almost 60 to 80% of PPH will be prevented. Okay, is prevented. So that is why active management is stressed so much. Okay. Next, you did your prevention, you did check everything, still the patient is having the signs and symptoms of postpartum hemorrhage. How will you manage? Firstly, it is a team effort. Nobody can manage PPH alone, okay? So it is a team effort. You should have a who knows how and when to intervene and treat the patient, a trained anesthetist when you want to explore the uterus, a clinical hematologist when you want to give massive blood transfusion, and supportive staff, the sisters and the supportive staff, okay? So these are the important team that you should have. Now you will assess her airway, breathing, circulation, and you will start your resuscitation. What are the basic steps of resuscitation? Firstly, you will secure a 2 wide IV bore line, and then you will start crystalloids. And because you will not be having blood by the side of your hand, isn't it? You have to cross match. It will take at least 20 minutes to half an hour. Till then, you don't want her to collapse. So what you will give? You will give her crystalloids, and then draw for blood grouping, cross-matching, also to know the CBC, the hemoglobin level and the platelet count, RFT, LFT should be drawn. The blood sample has to be drawn and immediately cross-matching has to go, okay? And patient is almost try keeping her flat, okay? Try keeping her flat or foot end elevation so that the blood flow to the vital organs is there, okay? Raise the foot end. Oxygen administration should be considered, catheterize the patient, and then because you want to know whether she is ending up in having renal failure, isn't it? Postpartum hemorrhage, most of them end up having renal failure. Plan for FFP transfusion or platelet concentrate transfusion. Remember, always when you give, in case of a postpartum hemorrhage, massive transfusion, it has a combination of FFPs and platelets. It is never alone blood, okay? Because blood alone is not going to help her. Her DIC will be there, okay? Consumptive coagulopathy will be there. All her platelets and factors, coagulating factors will be used up. So they will need extra. So you have to give FFPs and the platelet concentrates. So this is what you will do. The basic resuscitation. Now, coming to the actual cause for PPH, there are basic 4 classification of cause. Now, once you do her initial resuscitation, you should know why she's having bleeding or from where she's having bleeding. Whether her tone is not good, whether it is atonic PPH. 80% of the cases, it is atonic PPH. Okay. Then trauma, whether there is cervical trauma, vault trauma, angle extension, whether it is a trauma-induced PPH. Okay, then the treatment will vary, isn't it? So that is why you should know whether it is stone-induced or it is a trauma-induced. Next commonest is trauma, which is 10 to 15%. Third is the tissue. What do you mean by tissue? If there is a retained placenta inside. What happens if there is a retained placenta? Most commonly, it is a cause for secondary postpartum hemorrhage, isn't it? So it can cause secondary postpartum hemorrhage and the incidence is 3 to 5%. Lastly, the last common cause is a thrombin. So, thrombin means coagulopathy deficiency. They have platelet deficiency and other causes. Coagulating factors are not good. Then that they cause 1 to 2% chance of having a postpartum hemorrhage. The 4 T's that you should remember for PPH is torn, trauma, tissue, and thrombin. Okay. And you will be monitoring the patient throughout, especially a postpartum hemorrhage. You have to monitor every 15 minutes. You have to check her BP, pulse, respiratory rate, urine output, and oxygen saturation. These are the important things that you will monitor in case of PPH. Before going into the actual management of PPH, what is third stage hemorrhage? Third stage hemorrhage is nothing but like this. After the delivery of the baby, we told us TPH, isn't it? So after the baby is delivered, but the placenta is not yet delivered. It is third stage hemorrhage. In one case where placenta is not delivered, okay, where you can treat it by controlled cord traction. That is active management of third stage of labor. Still, if it is not coming out, then it is a case of a third stage hemorrhage. It is most commonly in case of adherent placenta. In such case, you can try giving oxytocin, injection oxytocin to the umbilical vein. Okay, once you give umbilical vein, there is some chance of separation. But if it is an adherent placenta, it is not going to come out. Okay, can give oxytocin to the umbilical vein. And then you will do uterine massage and manual removal of placenta under anesthesia. And oxytocin infusion, okay, and oxytocin infusion 20 units at least in 500 ml NS can be used, okay. More chance of having third stage hemorrhage, especially in cases of adherent placenta, okay, that is what you should know. Third stage hemorrhage is also managed similarly, but in third stage hemorrhage, placenta is not out, okay, that is the prime cause for the hemorrhage. Now, coming to the actual management with medical management, this is how you will try first, isn't it? So, in medical management, the first thing that you will use is the drugs. That is, oxytocin is the commonly used drugs. Otherwise, methyl ergometrin or methergin, carboprost, that is your prostaglandin F2 alpha, that is carboprost. Or you can use misoprostol and Trenexa. Okay, these are the commonly used drugs. So coming to the oxytocin, what is the common thing that you will see now about oxytocin? It is given as a IV infusion, not as a IV bolus. It is contraindicated as a IV bolus. You should never give as a IV bolus. It is given as a IV. You can give 10 to 20 units of oxytocin in 500 ml NS as an initial dose and route. It is or 10 units IM. Generally, we would have already given IM route during the active management. So now you will give as a 20 units as a IV infusion. Okay. Continuation dose should be maintained of 20 units as a IV infusion at 40 drops per minute. Okay. The maximum dose that you can give is 40 to 60 international units. That is what you can give for a oxytocin. Remember, oxytocin is never given as a IV bolus and it is complication as water intoxication and it is to be cautiously given in cardiac patients. Next, coming to the methergin or methyl ergometrin. Here the action starts very fast. Okay, you can give slow IV. What is the dose? 0.2 milligrams. Okay, dose is 0.2 milligrams slow IV and maintenance dose you can give IM 0.2 milligrams only, but you have to repeat it after 15 to 20 minutes. If the still PPH is happening, then only you will repeat it. Otherwise, you will not repeat it. Okay, first dose is 0.2 mg slow IV. Remember, methergin can be given both IV and IM. Okay. The maximum dose that you can give is 5 doses, that is up to 1 milligram. Okay, you can give maximum only up to 1 milligram. And the most important thing about the methergin is its contraindication. It is contraindicated in case of hypertension, preeclampsias, cardiac disease. All hypertensive disorders and cardiac disease, it is contraindicated because it will cause sudden increase in blood pressure. It is a vasospasm. So it will cause raise in blood pressure. So it is contraindicated in hypertensive and the cardiac disease patients. Also in case of retained placenta, it is contraindicated because it will cause contraction of the lower segment also. The os also will start getting closed and you will not be able to remove the placenta, isn't it? So that is why in retained placenta also it is contraindicated. Okay. So this is about the methergin. It is one of the important MCQs. About methergin, you should know. It is given both IV and IM. It is 0.2 mg, maximum dose of 1 milligrams. It is contraindicated in case of hypertension, cardiac disease and retained placenta. coming to the next drug, that is prostaglandin F2 alpha, which is also called as carboprost. Okay, carboprost is only given by IM route. Okay, you should remember it is only given as IM route. Carboprost is contraindicated IV. It should never be given as IV. Okay, what is the dose? It is 0.25 milligrams or 250 microgram. 2.25 milligrams. Same thing. Here also you have to repeat every 15 minutes. You can repeat the dose if the bleeding is not controlled. And maximum of how many doses of carboprost can be given? It can be given of 8 doses. Same like that of methergin. Here you can give up to 2 milligrams. Okay, up to 2 milligrams. Remember, methergin is contraindicated in case of cardiac disease, whereas carboprost is contraindicated in case of asthma because it causes bronchospasm. Okay, asthma patients, carboprost is avoided. Okay, this also is an important MCQ. Next, going ahead with the next drug, misoprostol. Misoprostol is a prostaglandin E1. Okay, so what does this do? It can be given in how many routes? It can be given oral, vaginal, all these things we read in induction, isn't it? So in PPH, it is given either per rectal or sublingual because of its rapid action. It can give sublingual or per rectal of 800 microgram is given, and you can repeat the dose about the rate of 200 to 800 microgram based on the amount of blood loss or PPH if still persisting, and it cannot be given more than 1600 microgram per day. Okay, not more than 1600 microgram per day. As such, there is no contraindication per se for case of misoprostol, but it is avoided if they have allergy to prostaglandins. That's all. Otherwise, there is no as such contraindication. Lastly, coming to tranexamic acid, it is recently added as one of the drugs for the case of PPH. It does not actually cause any symptom to contract the uterus. It will only act by causing antifibrinolytic activity. It acts by antifibrinolytic activity. Okay, the fibrin will be forming, isn't it? The fibrin lysis should not happen. The fibrin will be there. The clot will prevent the further blood loss. So it acts as an antifibrinolytic. This fibrin lysis is prevented. Okay. What is the dose? IV slowly of 1 gram can be given. You can repeat the dose every 30 minutes, maximum of 3 to 4 times in a day. Okay. You can give 1 gram IV thrice daily based on the amount of blood loss. If it is still there, you can give at a time. After 30 minutes, you can repeat the dose also. Not more than 10 mg per kg. Okay. This is the maximum dose. Not more than 10 mg per kg. It is contraindicated in cases of coagulopathy and convulsive disorders because it causes antifibrinolytic activity, so thrombus formation is there. So in coagulopathy disorders and convulsive disorders, it is better avoided. As it's not contraindicated, it is avoided. Okay, so this is about your medical management. These are the 5 important drugs that you should know: oxytocin, methergin, carboprost, misoprostol, and tranexamic acid. Okay. Now, coming to the mechanical methods. Remember, uterine massage, we have already told. Massage on the uterine fundus, release of oxytocin, further uterine contraction and prevention of atonicity. That is the mechanism of action. Coming to bimanual compression. Till the time you arrange these drugs or till the time you have enough capacity to handle a postpartum hemorrhage, you can use this method. Here you can see in this method, if by your vaginal hand, okay, vaginal hand is kept in the anterior fornix and pushing the anterior layer of the uterus, okay, whereas your other hand from the abdomen, okay, from the abdomen, it is pushing on the fundus from the posterior wall. So anterior and posterior wall are getting compressed between the two hands. Between your right hand and between your left hand, the two walls are getting compressed. So it acts as a compression. It then helps in formation of clot and helps in prevention of the PPH. Okay, it is a mechanical method. That is why it is a mechanical method. Mechanically, you compress the uterus between your two hands. One hand from the right hand in the vagina, left hand in the abdomen. The posterior wall is in your left hand, anterior wall is in your right hand. Compress both the hands. The uterus getting compressed between the two hands. So now there is reduction in the blood flow or the blood loss. Clot formation will improve and then helps in prevention of postpartum hemorrhage. Remember, all these are temporary. Once you remove, again there will be chance of having flabby uterus. Next mechanical method would be uterine balloon tamponade. So what happens in uterine balloon tamponade? Here it is also one of the mechanical method. You can see the uterus is distended with the balloon, uterine balloon. This may be a Foley's catheter. It may be by a Foley's catheter, Buckley balloon, or a condom catheter or a Sandstickle Blackmore. So these are the different methods, all of them hacked by the same method. It is a type of a uterine packing. Okay, you are going inside the uterus, distending the uterus with the Foley's or a balloon catheter. Okay, you can see Bakri balloon here. You can see how it is distending the uterine cavity. So this will act against that of a uterine wall. So now this uterine wall is in contact with that of a pressure from the balloon, isn't it? So now this balloon acts as a pressure on the uterine wall and hence prevent the postpartum hemorrhage. It is just like uterine packing. Remember, uterine packing was initially used long time back, but nowadays because of infection and not much use on postpartum hemorrhage, it is no more used. Okay, so uterine packing can be done when you don't have any other option at all. But you can do so many things. You can just put a Foley's catheter and distend it also. So many other options are there. So you can distend the Foley's catheter with NS of 500 to 200 to 500 ml. Okay. Successful in atonic PPH, avoid hysterectomy in 78% of cases. Okay. Just by doing this, you can avoid cesarean hysterectomies, especially in primary gravid. It's so painful to do, isn't it? We had one patient, she was referred from a post-PHC. She was like this. She delivered a male baby of 3.2 kg or something like that. And she came to us after delivery. On the way in the ambulance, okay, she is delivered. They referred in a PHC saying second stage, she is not delivering. So on the way, she delivered also, and she had so severe postpartum hemorrhage because of the delay in transportation was there. Okay, they could have sent early at least. So delivered on the way, and then she came to us late. So much blood loss was there. Finally, no medical management would be acting on her. If somebody is having 5 grams, you don't sit and wait for the medical management to act, isn't it? You will directly take for a surgical intervention. So your uterine artery ligation or your stepwise devasculation, nothing helped her. Finally, she ended up having a cesarean. For a 23-year-old doing a cesarean hysterectomy is such a painful thing, isn't it? So this is about the mechanical methods. Next, going ahead with a shifting. For this is also a type of mechanical method, shifting to the theater or transferring from a tertiary referral center. Okay, if she had delivered, this previous patient I told you, if she had delivered in PHC, they could have used this technique to prevent the loss. Okay, so that time at least we could have had some chance. If medical management fails and then you want to stabilize the patient and then transfer to the referral center, you cannot go and tell, isn't it? Oh, medical management failed, you can go now. You can go to referral center. No, you have to manage, you have to stabilize the patient before referring, isn't it? So you have to stabilize the patient and transfer to a referral center. Here you can use anti-shock garments. Okay, examination under anesthesia when your PPH happen in labor room. Okay, then you want to shift it to OT. During that time, you don't want the blood loss to increase. In that time, you can use this anti-shock garments. So what is this anti-shock garment? Non-pneumatic anti-shock garments. Okay, so what happens in this non-pneumatic anti-shock garments? They have this 5 divisions. Firstly, the first one is around the ankle. You bind it around the ankle. Second one is around the calf muscle. You can see they're binding it around the calf muscle. Third one is around the thigh. Okay, so you bind it around the thigh. And then the fourth one, it is around the pelvis. Okay, you can see here they are binding it around the pelvis. Finally, the fifth one is around the umbilicus, just below the umbilicus. The fifth one is the main one which will compress the uterine fundus. Okay, the other things help in pulling the blood from below to up, whereas the final fifth one is the one which helps in compression of the uterine fundus, because as you know, after delivery, the level of the uterus will be at the level of umbilicus, isn't it? So now this is the one which will compress the uterus also. So how does this work? Here you can see, if you do not put a non-pneumatic anti-shock garment, this is how she will be bleeding. So the major organs like brain, heart, lungs and liver are not getting any blood flow. All the blood flow is to the pelvis and below, isn't it? Whereas if you use your anti-shock garments, so the blood flow to the lower structures is less. This is helping the blood flow to go to the vital organs. The brain, heart and lungs and livers are getting blood flow now. Also, it will help in compression of the uterus. The uterine fundus is getting compressed here and hence causing the prevention of blood loss. Once the blood flow towards the lower pelvis is less, the blood pressure also will become less and hence the blood loss also will be less, isn't it? So, whenever you are shifting from a PHC or when you want to shift from a ward to that of a OT, especially if you want to examine for clots, placenta, membranes or trauma, if it is one of the reasons for the PPH. So in such cases, you have to use this garment. Here you can see how they've shown clearly. 1 is around ankle, 2 is around the calf, 3 is around the thighs, and 4 is around the pelvis. 5th one is around the lower abdomen until the umbilicus. Okay, so here when you wind it up, this is the main important one. So they can ask you any questions like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how this is binded, and also which is the one which will compress the uterus. Okay, these are the type of questions they can ask you. Okay, so this ends your medical and mechanical methods. Now let us progress with that of our surgical methods. What are the surgical methods for prevention of PPH? It is under suturing of the placental bed. It is mostly done well in case of placenta previa. Placenta previa, this attachment will be in the lower segment. If this is the uterus, the placenta will be attached in the lower segment, isn't it? As you all know, the lower segment do not have much of the musculature tissue. So, muscle is not there. So, living ligature is not there. So, there is more chance of bleeding in case of placenta previa. So, in such case, once the placenta is out, this placental bed is being sutured. Okay, under suturing of the placental bed. This is done in case of placenta previa. Next, coming to the compression sutures, B-Lynch sutures, Heyman sutures or Cho-square sutures. B-Lynch and Heyman are the most commonly used ones. Let me show you how to do this B-Lynch sutures. So let us imagine this to be a uterus. Okay, you have given an incision over here. You can see in this photo also, we have given an incision over here. So where will be your first bite? First bite will be on the anterior wall. This is your incision. So anterior wall on the lower part. This is your first bite. Then again you will come out in the anterior wall on the upper side. You can see I have marked 1 and 2. So anterior wall, when you pierce anteriorly 1, this will be 2. Then you will go behind like this. The suture material is gone behind. Now you will come to the posterior wall. You can see here in the 3, they have entered from posteriorly. They've entered posteriorly, and in 4, they've exited posteriorly only. Okay, on the posterior wall. Now you had gone like this above. Then you will enter from the posterior wall, then come out in the lateral side of the posterior wall. And then you will come out from above. Now you have come to the other side. Now the other side, you can see 5 where the anterior wall upper segment and 6 is the anterior wall lower segment. I hope you understood. I have marked here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for your easy understanding. The color green is showing on the posterior wall and color blue is showing on the anterior wall. Okay, so this is how you go. 1, 2, go behind, 3, 4 and come forward, and 5 and 6. Okay, they may ask you the steps. That is why I am telling you this. So, and then you will finally suture anteriorly. Okay, and then compress it and suture. This is done called as a B-Lynch sutures. Okay. This is the B-Lynch. This can be done when you're doing a cesarean section. You have cut this incision is there. Remember, just like this uterus is delivered vaginally. Now what you will do, you will not make an incision, go anterior, posterior and come, isn't it? Again, you give an incision, she will bleed only. So in such cases, you will do modified B-Lynch or Heyman sutures. So what is Heyman sutures? Here you will go anterior to posterior and tie the suture on top of the uterus. So let us see if this is the uterus. There is no incision at all here. What you will do? You will go anterior to posterior and then you will tie over here. And on the same thing you will do on the both the sides. Actually, both the sides are tied simultaneously. It is modified B-Lynch or a Heyman suture which you do on a unscarred uterus. Okay, where there is no incision, unscarred or unincised uterus, when there is no cut. Okay, in such cases, uncut uterus is there. In such cases, you do Heyman stitch. Okay, so if they give you options like this, patient delivered vaginally and then she ended up having postpartum hemorrhage, you want to do a surgical management, which is the next step that you will do. Okay, first thing in surgical management is that because she delivered vaginally, you have to do is a Heyman stitch. Okay, then if the patient delivered by cesarean section having severe postpartum hemorrhage, what is the next best surgical management you will do? It is B-Lynch sutures. Once these two sutures also fail, then we go for stepwise devascularization. What do you mean by stepwise devascularization? You will cut down the blood flow to the uterus. Okay, so this will reduce the pulse pressure. Okay, mechanism of action of a stepwise devascularization is not that the blood flow to uterus is reduced. It is reducing the pulse pressure. Okay, remember, reducing the pulse pressure. They will ask you this as an MCQ. Okay, you should remember. It will reduce the pulse pressure. Okay, the amount flow at which rate it was going to the uterus will reduce. The flow to the uterus will reduce, hence help in clot formation and reduces the postpartum hemorrhage. In stepwise devascularization, which is the first one you will suture or ligate, it is the uterine artery. Okay, and by the side of your incision or the uterine angles, this is where you will ligate your uterine arteries. Okay, so first thing that you will ligate is uterine artery. If still the bleeding is not controlled, second thing that you will use or ligate is your uterine and ovarian anastomosis at just below the fallopian tube. Okay, the fallopian tube around 1 to 2 centimeters below, you will ligate there. Okay, that is your second most important step, ligation of the utero-ovarian artery. Okay, and if still it is not controlled, then so your last option will be to ligate the internal iliac artery. So this is the common iliac artery, this is external iliac, this is internal iliac. So where you will ligate an internal iliac artery, it is 3 centimeters below the bifurcation. This is the bifurcation, isn't it? Here you can see this is the bifurcation. So it is 3 centimeters below that of a bifurcation is where you should ligate here. Okay, this is internal iliac artery ligation. So why you should ligate 3 centimeters below? If you ligate above that, you will be ending up ligating the posterior branches of the internal iliac artery. You only want to ligate that of the anterior branches. You don't want to do that for the posterior branches. Why? Because posterior branches are the end branches. So once you ligate the end branches, they will end up having necrosis, isn't it? So you don't want that. You want only for this pulse pressure to reduce. So you will ligate only the anterior branches. That is 3 centimeters below. If you come and ligate, then you will be safe. You will not involve the posterior branches of the internal iliac artery. So in stepwise devascularization, what are the things? First is uterine artery, second is utero-ovarian anastomosis, and third is internal iliac artery. Okay, that too only anterior branch, not the posterior branches. Posterior branches should never be ligated as they are the end branches. Okay. So there are some other surgical managements also. You can use uterine artery embolization wherever you have an interventional radiologist. If you have an option of interventional radiologist, if they give you in your exam saying the interventional radiologist is available, then your treatment of choice will be uterine artery embolization. It is less invasive and more successful. Okay, they use polyvinyl alcohol as the particles to ligate or to clamp that of the uterine arteries. Okay, if not, you can also do intravascular aortic ballooning. You can see that is also done in cases of a fibroid uterus, isn't it? Both these are done in case of fibroid uterus to prevent bleeding, heavy menstrual bleeding. Same mechanism is used here also. You can see they'll put a catheter like this as shown in the figure. They put a catheter, they will inflate at the end here. So they will inflate and prevent the postpartum hemorrhage. Or finally, if nothing works out, you will be ending up doing a cesarean hysterectomy. As we told, doing a hysterectomy for a 23-year-old is so painful. That is why so many steps we have, but they end up coming so late that you could not have any other choice. Okay. As such, postpartum hemorrhage itself is a complication, and postpartum hemorrhage can also cause other complications also, like hypovolemic shock. Okay, the hypovolemic shock, DIC, and renal failure, adult respiratory distress syndrome, Sheehan's syndrome. That is what? Lactation failure, pituitary hematoma, thromboembolisms. Okay, and thromboembolism. All these can finally lead to death. That is why postpartum hemorrhage has the maximum mortality, maternal mortality. Okay. So lastly, massive PPH, high morbidity and high mortality is due to acidosis, hypothermia, coagulopathy, and massive transfusion. These are the common cause of death. Okay. Or the primary reasons will be this. Postpartum hemorrhage is the cause. They end up having these things. Finally, we cannot revive back the patient. So this is just a table for you to recollect hemostasis. Okay, hemostasis you can remember. Whatever we have discussed till now falls under this. For H, it stands for ask for help, isn't it? First thing we showed is call for help. What are the team that you should have? Hands on the uterus. Do the uterine massage. You should not remove. The tonicity should be improved. Then E stands for establish etiology. What is the cause? The 4 T's that we have told, isn't it? Bleeding is because of trauma. There is a cervical tear. You keep on giving oxytocin, Hurricane uterine contraction. Will that help? No. You have to suture the trauma, isn't it? Then ensure the airway breathing circulation is good. Ensure availability of blood and the blood products available. Okay. Then massage the uterus. Oxytocin. O stands for oxytocin infusion. Prostaglandins, once you give oxytocin, the other medical management, prostaglandins can be given IV, IM and per rectal. So which prostaglandin? Carboprost is avoided IV. Okay, then S, shift to the theater, aortic pressure in anti-shock garments during transfer should be used. Then T stands for tamponade. Balloon tamponade can be used. Uterine packing after excluding the tissue and trauma. Consider tranexamic acid. Okay. T stands for. A stands for apply compression sutures or Belen sutures. S stands for systematic pelvic devascularization, uterine ovarian quadruple or the internal iliac artery ligation. Then I stands for intervention radiologist, and if appropriate, uterine artery embolism can be done. S stands for subtotal or total hysterectomy. Okay, I know this is very difficult to remember like this, but maybe if you can remember, you can try it like this. What you have to remember is make a clinical scenario. A patient walks to you. You cannot just go take her to OT, isn't it? First thing that you should do is call for help. Make sure that the patient is stable. Stabilize the patient. Make sure her airway, breathing, everything is fine. Then you go for your first is medical management. Then is your mechanical management. Then is your surgical management. You have to remember these things. There is no choice. Okay. So here ends your postpartum hemorrhage. Let us do some quick MCQs. Which among the following are risk factor for developing postpartum hemorrhage? Severe preeclampsia, yes. Name a disease, everything is risk factor. Retained placenta, obesity, all of the above. Yes, all of them are a risk factor for postpartum hemorrhage. Next question. A 28-year-old Gravida 3 para 2 female delivered normal child followed by a delivery of the placenta. Okay, she's delivered normal child and placenta has also come out. And there was a torrential PV bleeding after 30 minutes. An urgent sonography revealed a retained placental tissue. What is the suspected condition? Substantiate placenta. Yes, this we have not discussed here, but we'll discuss in the abnormal placenta. Okay, if the placenta has come out fully, but there was another lobe of placenta which we didn't know. Okay, now that is, this placenta has come out, this extra lobe is still there, isn't it? That is the one which is causing retained placenta. Accreta, increta, percreta, they do not deliver the placenta fully, isn't it? They have given the placenta was delivered. Here what happens? Placenta will be adherent. They will not come out so easily. Next question. Carboprost, that is prostaglandin F2 alpha, isn't it? Remember these things. Okay, they can give you any ways. They can give you a PGF2 alpha, they can give you a carboprost, that is why. Is used in the medical management of postpartum hemorrhage. Which among the following is contraindication? Asthma. Yes, this is the correct answer. We have told you asthma is contraindication. Other than that, it should never be given IV. Only IM, isn't it? Then constipation, hypertension, fever, these are its complications. They are its side effects, you can say. Okay, they are not as contraindication. They causes hypertension, fever and constipation. Next question. Which among the following is true regarding the various obstetric shock index used in the diagnosis of PPH? What is obstetric shock index? It is pulse rate divided by systolic blood pressure, isn't it? So, that is what we want. Normal value of obstetric shock index is more than 1, is it? What is normal value? It is 0.7 to 0.9. So, this is wrong. What is true is asked. Okay. During pregnancy, if the value is in the range of 0.7 to 0.8, then it is reflective of massive bleeding which requires blood transfusion. No, this is normal. So, this is also wrong. A value of obstetric shock index more than 1 in a patient of PPH. Yes, this is correct, isn't it? If it is more than 1, then you should think in terms of PPH. None of the above is true. No, C is correct. Next question. Which among the following is incorrect regarding the device shown in the image? Okay, this is a Bakri balloon. You can see it is mechanical method for prevention of a postpartum hemorrhage. The use is Bakri balloon catheter. Yes. It is made up of latex. No, it is not made up of latex. It is made up of polyvinyl. Most of the patients will have allergy to latex. Okay, that is why latex is no more used. Okay. Ensure efficient control of bleeding. No, wrong. It is to be filled with 500 ml of warm saline and kept it up to 12 hours. You can keep from 6 to 12 hours. Okay. It only provides temporary relief of PPH. Once you remove, they can have again further PPH. Okay. So, this correct answer will be B. Next question. Which among the following is not a management option of massive postpartum hemorrhage? Balloon tamponade. Yes, you can do balloon tamponade. It's hysterectomy. If she comes at 4 grams with massive hemorrhage and then she is collapsing, you may have to do hysterectomy. Thermal endometrial ablation. Can you do ablation for this postpartum patients? No, never. Thermal endometrial ablations are used for heavy menstrual bleeding, okay, for AUBs, not for a PPH. So this is wrong answer. What you can use that is uterine artery embolization or that of a aortic balloon catheterization, not a endometrial ablation, okay. Then Behling sutures. Yes, you can use Behling sutures also. So correct answer is C. Last question. Which among the following is not correct regarding the management of PPH? Non-pneumatic anti-shock garments are used as a temporary methods. Yes, they are used for temporary, for shifting, isn't it? They are not treating your PPH. They are not treating your cause. So correct. What is not correct is asked. Next, uterine massage and bimanual compression are both recommended measures. Yes, you have to do uterine massage and bimanual compression until you get your help, isn't it? Then, uterine packing has been added as a treatment option as per the current WHO recommendation. No, we told you it was there before, but now nobody uses this because the correction also is less and chance of infection and other things are high. So, this is not recently recommended. Uterine, ovarian and internal iliac artery ligation are measures to consider prior hysterectomy. Yes, this is called as what? Stepwise devascularization, isn't it? So, this is also correct. So, correct answer will be C. This ends your postpartum hemorrhage. I hope you can recollect in your exam and will be able to answer all your clinical scenario based questions. Thank you.